to start off source by giving all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, Ba'ashem, Kodash. Double honors to the apostles of great millstone, and honors you brothers doing the work of the Most High in truth and in sincerity. Yahweh's real name, of whom the world ignorantly calls God, Jehovah, or Yahweh. His real name is Yahweh. The Son's true name is Yahushua, and when we pray Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, bringing it in, meaning that, and Sham, meaning name, so Yahweh and the name of Yahushua. It's going to be quite just mainly a read of this thread. I think this individual does a good job of basically explaining, the technicalities of the blue screen of death that the world witnessed over on Friday gone. So it's the 22nd of July now, and this happened on the 19th, last Friday gone. Right, but I've just because I'm an engineer by trade, software engineer by trade, so I've just been kind of just speaking to people that kind of know a little bit more, but are also not just accepting of whatever the official narrative is, right? So I've just been speaking with a few people, and one of them sent me this. Like I said, so it's a good read. It explains kind of things in non-technical terms. If some precepts come to mind, well, I'll get them. But it's mainly just going to be a read of this, right? Because this is it. CrowdStrike will have known who their customers are, right? It's just something you do in business, right? Because it allows you to sell your products to prospective customers, right? And in fact, I won't do it, but in fact, I'll do it in the other tab as I'm making the point, right? But rather than in the other screen as I'm making the point. But yeah, these kinds of customers, these kinds of companies know who their customers are, right? And as such, they will know that a release of anything will basically affect huge clients. So, and in fact, yeah, so now that I am actually on their website, so let me bring it in. In fact, let me open a new tab and I'll bring it in. So move to another tag. Here we go. Right, so this is Salesforce, for example, right? So you see it there. So what when they put Salesforce in their homepage, what that's doing is telling other prospective companies to be like, hey, we're a legit company, and we're like used by the biggest companies in the world, so use us. Right? So the point I'm trying to make there is they knew the kind of people that they know the kinds of people that are affected by their software releases, meaning that they will have process, and stringent process at that, okay? Because you don't bring down Delta, you don't bring down BA, you don't bring down governments, okay, which is what we saw from this thing, right? It's just sort of like if you are writing software for a bank, you don't just let your software accidentally send money to the wrong account, right? You don't do that. Okay, so for us in the IT world that don't just believe official narratives, we will kind of like this stinks. Okay, so I'll read this. Like I said, it's mainly just going to be a reading of this, and like I said, if there's any precept that come to mind also, I'll grab them. And yeah, so this is from Eden, all right, Eden. So it says the global IT. Mind you, I'm not verified any of who this guy claimed purports to be, but I do know what he's saying in terms of what he's saying to be true, right? He just explains it really nicely. Right, it says the global IT outage you witnessed was not an accident. Important. All right, the purpose of this thread is to explain non-IT and to non-information cybersec professionals why I believe the outage you are seeing around the world due to the update is not an accident, right? And once again, I concur. So before we begin introduction, this is what I was saying. I've not verified this, but it says, this guy says I'm known as the person behind those docs, and most of my writing here on Twitter has been on that related topics. However, my professional work has been in infosec, right, and cybersecurity. Right, some of our credentials include head of information at Metrobank, Maersk, MSD, consultants to insurance and financial institutes. The opinion you're about to read is based on years of experience, right? And that's what I meant by I'm not verified it. But this is stuff that I do, that I can, corroborate, right? It says, let's start with what we have. Huge number of systems around the world have crashed because of a deployment of an update to a software that was installed on them that came from a company called CrowdStrike, making them display the infamous blue screen of death, Right now, this is also kind of ironic, and what I'll do, because I'm not actually prepared for this lesson, is I'll just do Lord's Law, just a brief history on the internet, right? Because the whole point, if I remember correctly, of the internet was not to have a single point of failure, which is now as well something that they've been speaking about as a response to this, right? And we know how these Edomites were all around KO, right? So I'm just making a note real quick on just the internet as as a point, real quick, just on exactly why they built it, why you had like DARPANET, because the whole thing was, before it was like you would make a call and it will go to an exchange, and then that exchange would then go to the recipient, right? By call, it's either phone call, a network, or whatever, right? But then the whole problem was, if that exchange got destroyed, then you could no longer get your message from A to B, right? So what they created was a web where you ended up having different paths to your endpoint, right? So from A to B, it could go from many different ways. Okay, so the idea that we now have, single points of failure in software, right, in systems, kind of defeats the whole purpose of the internet in itself. So we carry on, right? It says, how can a software kill your computer? Simple. Most software run in a restrictive mode, right? For instance, as someone that tinkers around on my computer, right? If I want to install programs in other ways, then I have to use something called the command line, and in that command line, I have to use a mode called sudo, right? sudo, which stands for super user do, right? And even then, especially on something like Mac OS, right, it's not going to let me do everything, right? Why? Because you can destroy your computer, right, if you don't know what you're doing, right? So that's why most software won't kill your computer. Right, so it says run in a restrictive mode, meaning the system allowed them to run in an environment on your computer and is restricting its access to real resources of the computer. There are, however, some exceptions, right? And I'm not going to pretend like I'm a computer science guy, but I do know there is a lot of work that goes into ensuring things work in containers, right? So you have like a top container, and then that will speak to pseudo obviously meaning fake, but like pseudo things, and then those things will actually chat to the actual machine itself, right? So once again, just a little bit more on that. So drivers, so for instance, drivers are an example of this, right? It says drivers are a type of software that run in a highly unrestricted mode. So as an example, when you open up, say, Chrome, right, and you're playing something on YouTube, right, that audio isn't talking to the speakers on your computer or the speakers on your phone. That audio from the video, Chrome is passing that to a audio driver, right? And that audio driver is the thing that runs in the quote unquote unrestricted mode to speak. And the thing is, this may even be an oversimplification of it, but that will be then speaking to the speakers, right, on Chrome's behalf, right, for the most part, which is why, for instance, you get a load of permissions, ask for permissions, or can I do this, can I do that? But even then, it's not necessary. When it say we need permission for your microphone, it's then not even necessarily speaking directly to the microphone. It will be speaking to the microphone or the audio driver on your computer, which speaks to the hardware that is connected to your microphone. Okay. So it says, for example, your screen display needs to have access to the hardware to operate correctly. Anti-malware, antivirus, anti-spyware also run in such a way. Why? Because they need to inspect other software on your computer, right? And thus they run in what is known as privilege mode, right? If code that runs in privilege mode is not written correctly, it can crash your computer. So once again, just on that, they want us to all believe that they've got this software that runs in a super unrestricted mode that has the potential to bring down systems, but they didn't do basic checks. Once again, one of the retorts that I heard was, oh, it was just a config file, right? But even then, you still need to perform checks on that, Okay, you need to be like, oh, what will changing these values do on different systems? Once again, and this is also another thing, is how did it get deployed on literally more or less every device all at the same time? Whatever happened to, so one of the things that we do as well in software is something called a phased rollout, right? So let me see if I can bring this into this screen easily. Let's see if this is a good. There's all of these pop-ups, man, asking for bloody permissions, right? Move to another tab. Right, so a phase rollout is a hardware software migration method that involves incrementally implementing a new system, right? So long and short of it is, you, let's say you've got 100 computers, you do it to one, then okay, one's good, that's working good, then you do it to 10. Oh, okay, cool, 10's working good, cool. Right, then maybe you may jump, say, okay, well, now we're just going to do it to 40, right? So we're doubling it now. Well, okay, they're all good. I think we've got good confidence that everything is good. Now we're going to roll it out to the rest of to the rest of the machines, i.e., you don't roll out to 100% immediately, right? So it says, so back to this one, right? It says why? Because they need to inspect other software on your computer, and thus they run in what is known as privilege mode. If code, yes, we read that. So since the threats that a modern computer, which is connected to the internet, is constantly evolving, modern anti-malware, antivirus, anti-spyware manufacturers need to develop a mechanism that allows them to develop, test, and distribute such code, which brings us to DevOps, right? So the software space is fragmented quite a bit. And if I'm just going to use that terminology for the time being. So you got your engineers that will, say, for instance, work on the front end. So the front end is what you see. So a front end developer made all of these buttons show up and whatever, what have you. Whereas, say, a back end developer is the one that is writing the algorithms for what you see, what it shows up in this section, which response is going to show up first when I scroll down to the bottom, why it's showing me this on the right hand side. So they're the ones where they'll just give you the data. But then also you then have a layer behind them, which are your, what we call your DevOps, right? Your development operations, because these all this software needs to needs to run on some kind of machine, right? And it's basically, those are the people that are in charge of, like, okay, once you have written your code, how does it go up onto twitter.com, right? How does the code, the front end, interact, channel through different ways into the, it gets technical. But just to give a background of the front, back, and DevOps, right? DevOps is a set of practices, tools, and cultural philosophies that aim to automate and integrate the process of software development and IT operations, right? It says its primary, development and IT ops, so DevOps. Its primary goal is to shorten the system's development life cycle and provide continuous delivery with high quality. In traditional software development methods, any update which is being released must be tested by quality assurance teams, right? And then after the QA teams submit their results, they are being reviewed by change management committee, who decide whether to deploy the update. Now, once again, when your software is used by governments, when your software is used by airlines, you don't just release. There are processes that you have to go through. It's not just a boop, it's all done. No, there are processes that have to be taken. Okay, and they're trying to tell us all that no, it was just an accident. It was just a config update which we didn't expect to break the world, right? They literally broke the world, right? All it did was highlight just how easy it is for these elites to just bring this world down, in a matter of seconds, right? It's funny you said Genocide Joe, right? But then that's a more accurate name than Sleepy Joe, although Sleepy Joe is also good, right? So DevOps is an attempt to industrialize and automate the process using technology so that rapid changes can be developed and installed, and a whole set of platforms have been developed over the years to allow such things to occur, which brings us to SecOps, right? So security, right? All software can lead to unwanted results. So that is a thing to be aware of, right? That if this was a smaller company, then you could say that actually, if it, bugs happen in software. That's one thing that you can be sure of, right? Bugs will happen. So at certain times you go on a website, it won't work. It's been a bad deploy or whatever, what have you. But once again, when you when you're writing software that once again is using critical infrastructure, right? Then you've got problems, right? Imagine this is the braking system on your car, right? Imagine this is the what do you call? Imagine this is the air traffic control systems, or the because I think I said braking systems, but then you got bloody Elon Musk and his Rush software, but he's part of the system as well, right? But when you look at, say, aviation software, right? Look what happened when with say Boeing, right? And their rushed practices and stuff like that. Okay, there are certain industries where make you don't take shortcuts, and you're not allowed to take shortcuts. Okay, so it says all software can lead to unwanted results, to issues related to the confidentiality, integrity, availability, or authenticity of information. Thus, the role of security is to manage these risks. In parallel to the development of DevOps, a new approach to security was formed. SecOps, or security operations, is a discipline within information security that focuses on maintaining and improving the security posture of an organization through continuous monitoring, proactive threat hunting, incident response, and security infrastructure management. Like I say, it's me, you're just gonna be reading this. So if you're into techie stuff, then you can carry on. But so it says DevOps aims to streamline and accelerate the software development lifecycle by fostering dev and ops teams collaboration. SecOps aims to integrate security practices into IT operations, ensuring security is maintained through IT lifecycle. This is back to CrowdStrike. It says, let's focus on CyberSec company who has a product that protects computers. How does security look like in a modern software company? Multiple technologies are being used to automate what in the past took a lot of time and effort. Let's say a new threat has been discovered. The script was identified as having the capacity, right, to give admin right to download and install from the internet a bit of code that will allow an attacker to gain control over your computer. Now, if we all remember the days of like viruses and Trojans and stuff like that, which is why nowadays, one of the reasons why I just use a Mac these days. Not to say that there isn't a backdoor, in these machines anyway, because they talk about, for instance, end-to-end encryption, right? But what if the end is compromised? It just means that you can't do anything over the wire, but at both ends, if they're compromised, then it doesn't matter, right? It says if your company is the business of protecting systems, you want to make sure that the computers which use your code to protect their assets will not be vulnerable to that threat. How would you do it in a way that would be efficient? You would write code that identifies the script. Right? In a DevOps SecOps environment, you submit that update and it passes an automated process that checks for the quality of the change, and that is it, right? We all have like different what do you call it? Different companies use different tools, but this ultimately goes into something called CI/CD pipelines, right? So continuous integration and continuous development, right? So one of the biggest players in the market, GitHub, now owned by Microsoft, is something that basically makes this easy, right? So you basically write your software, when you push it up, right, it will do the checks for you. It will check your what's the word I'm looking for? It will check whatever you set up, but it will, if you're a company that does technology, the security, you will be running checks that everything builds. And the thing is as well, you would that, for instance, people that write mobile apps, they'll use platforms that will literally test on an Android phone, and especially on like with the Android space being so fragmented. If it's a small company that don't care that it doesn't work on like an Oppo or Huawei or whatever, then they won't, right? But they will test your Samsung, and they'll test your Samsung S20, they'll test your Samsung S21, 2, 3, 4, right? And then they'll test all like, let's say, the last 5 years of iPhone, right, to make sure that their software works well on those phones. Now, a company, and that will all run in an automated pipeline, right? All they have to do is write the test, and then the test will go out. Okay, it's not anything that we the developer themselves has to do. It's not like the old days where you would literally have to have like 50 devices to perform these tests. No, this all happens in the quote cloud these days. Okay. So it says, how do you check such code? It says you run the update on multiple systems, multiple, right? And based on the results, you decide if it works or not. Now, this seems to have taken out literally every single machine, but like it took out a lot of machines, even here in the UK, where I happened to be in the office that day, and the screens that we use for Zoom calls had been taken out. Right, it says, how do you check such code? You run on multiple systems, and based on the results, you decide whether it works or not. In other words, you run your update against a lot of systems, and this is the thing that keeps coming back. It's like, if you're running it on a lot of systems, how did you not find it? Once again, this is a would you call it a listed company, right? I'm trying to remember what was stock. Right, so this is a listed company on Nasdaq, right, and they want us to believe that they didn't have the correct it's not bloody loading. They want us to believe that they did not have like basic testing, right, involved, right, which is just it's just not, it's just not real, right? And even as I'm looking, right, this also is, so I looked for year to date, so you would have had a whole load of people that would have, without knowing, lost a lot of money, but you certainly would have had a lot of people that made quite a bit of money because the stock price, in fact, let me see if I can bring this to this screen. The stock price has been doing this, so it's been going up, right? So it went up, quite a bit, right, just at the beginning of the year, right? So as always, someone made a lot of money, but also a lot of people that just late to the game lost a load of money, right? So we carry on. Yeah, so it says, obviously you will check for more things, but this is the most basic thing you do, especially when your code is running as a driver. Once again, these are privileged software systems, right? It says, after your code is tested, you add another layer of protection by performing something called signing your code, right? What is signing? Signing is part of cryptography, which is the practice and study of techniques for securing communication and information from your adversaries, right? Once again, which is why WhatsApp will constantly tell you end-to-end encrypted. Says a digital signature provides authenticity the same way your handwritten signature is used as proof of your authenticity. Since you do not want your software update mechanism to be hijacked by adversaries, you use something called digital signature to make sure that it will only update code that was signed by your company, right, and protect you from you protect the method of. So I'm not sure what he was trying to say there, right? But that's why, for instance, when you install software, it will say, oh, okay, this software comes from X, Y, and Z, right? Or if you install something from, say, a smaller company, it will be like, well, I don't know who this is. If you install it, you're installing it on your own, whatever. Okay, because that software will be signed. So it says, this is how every modern company in the world who develop code, especially in the domain of security world, act. Right? In most cases, it's an automated process that takes place after the results of QA process was successful, right? Which brings us back to CrowdStrike. There is no way on earth that this update from CrowdStrike has passed quality assurance tests, and there is no way on earth such a bad bit of code that must have crashed so many systems, I think, in QA phase would ever been signed unless someone wanted to kill a lot of systems and do it fast. It says, why would anyone want to cause such an outbreak of so many computer systems? It says, because when a computer system crashes, it can lead to loss of data, right? Who will want information to be lost? People who want to hide things they did. So who would want to hide things they did? Criminals, right? Now this is where it kind of starts going into his own opinions and stuff like that. I don't particularly like I said, this ends up being his own his own opinions and stuff like that. But basically, he's saying that this also happens on um happen to be around about what's the word I'm looking for? Happen to be around about the same time when um the whole thing against Trump happened. So that's what he's kind of linking it into. I obviously I don't I'm not gonna go into that. What was supposed to happen has happened, right? But what is there is not a coincidence. You see this here. In fact, to be fair, let me actually verify that real quick. Let's see. Yep, so verified that. So let's bring that into this screen. All right, CrowdStrike is, we see it, CrowdStrike is a leading provider of next-gen endpoint protection, threat intelligence, and incident responses, right? CrowdStrike Falcon as well, right? Let's see who this Ablakite is. Dmitry Alperovich, right? Wherever he's from, okay? But yeah, so once again, this is just it. As the scriptures say, man, we are not ignorant of Satan's devices. So it says 2 Corinthians 2:11, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we're not ignorant of his devices, right? When we see these things happening in the world, it's kind of like, well, what's really happening? It's always a question that we're gonna ask: what is really happening? Okay, but we'll see. What the final response will be from this, right? Because that's the thing with E. You don't necessarily look at what he's done; you look at how he responds to a thing. Okay. So like I said, quite a technical one. Not too many precepts. Just reading this and giving my thoughts on what happened on Lords. Well, I'll kind of do more in this space. This tech space and stuff like that. But yeah, it just goes back to the point of this shouldn't have happened. We're just kind of like, would you mean an update brought down the world, right? So just once again proving just how quickly and how easily it is for this Edomite to bring down, bring down the net, right? So as always, that was edifying. Until next time, we say shalom.